The mystery of the legendary Bermuda Triangle is one of the most gripping tales of our time. To this day, we're unable to explain the eerie incidents that take place in this mysterious sea area. It seems as if almost all ships and aircraft that disappear in the Devil's Triangle are irretrievably lost for all of eternity. In a few rare cases, however, the objects that were once lost in the Bermuda Triangle reappear as if by magic, sometimes many decades after they disappeared from the scene. Today, we'll take a look at several inexplicable events that have already taken place in the legendary Bermuda Triangle, and how the experts are trying to explain the seemingly supernatural stories. But before we get started, make sure you hit that like button and ring the notification bell for more videos. Also, stick around to the end to hear about an extremely strange discovery that may never be fully explained. You won't want to miss this one. SS COTOPAXI. It was November 29, 1925, when the SS COTOPAXI left the port of Charleston in South Carolina. What the crew didn't suspect at this point was that the cargo ship loaded with coal would never reach its destination, the Cuban capital, Havana. Together with the SS COTOPAXI, the 32-man crew also disappeared without a trace in the Bermuda Triangle. For the next 95 years, there was no trace of the freighter or its crew. For many decades, the disappearance of the U.S. ship formed a continuous outpouring of the myths and legends that kept fueling the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. Wreckage, corpses, lifeboats. It seemed as if all traces of the COTOPAXI had been completely erased from the world. It wasn't long before the myth of the lost ship was picked up in popular culture. Even the world-famous Hollywood director Steven Spielberg was enthusiastic about the gripping legend. In his 1970s classic Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the legendary ship finally appears in the Gobi Desert. But what really happened to the cargo ship? Well, for once, it seems as though this mystery may have finally reached a conclusion. That's because the underwater researcher Michael Barnett actually succeeded in identifying the long-lost shipwreck last year. The remains of the COTOPAXI are lying about 55 kilometers off the northeast coast of Florida. In order to record this sensational discovery, Barnett and his team first went on a search for clues. He devoted himself to a crucial detail that had simply been overlooked during the previous rescue attempts. The SS COTOPAXI made one last emergency call before they disappeared. Using the coordinates given at the time, the researcher finally succeeded in narrowing down the area in which the freighter sank. The problem was, another shipwreck was already at the alleged sinking site, the Bear Wreck. However, nothing more was known about the background story of this ominous ship. Barnett wasn't satisfied with the official version of the story and began making several dives to the wreck. Using the original blueprint of the COTOPAXI, he managed to find some similarities between the sketches and the supposed remains of the Bear Wreck. In addition, Barnett came across documents that marked the last known location of the COTOPAXI. The corresponding position was only 35 kilometers from the Bear Wreck site. Thanks to these clear indications, the underwater researcher is certain that the remains of the Bear Wreck are in fact the COTOPAXI wreck. While it officially took 95 years for the freighter to be identified, the truth is that the shipwreck was discovered 35 years earlier. However, no one suspected at the time that it was the missing COTOPAXI, so the unknown wreck was simply named Bear Wreck. It's considered likely that the coal freighter fell victim to a violent tropical storm. Star Tiger. While the experts finally succeeded in identifying the wreck of the SS COTOPAXI, the whereabouts of the Star Tiger remain an unsolved mystery. What's known is that the 31-person passenger plane rose into the clouds for the last time on January 30th, 1948. Launched from Santa Maria Airport, the plane would eventually land at Kindley Field in Bermuda, without the crew having previously complained about any technical problems. Radio contact with the Star Tiger suddenly broke off. Later, reports were issued about an airplane moving at an exceptionally low altitude. It's therefore still assumed today that the passenger plane lost its course for an unknown reason and then headed for the east coast of the USA. After the disappearance of the Star Tigers, those responsible initiated a large-scale search. Aside from some floating debris in the area, which couldn't be definitively linked to the Star Tiger, the rescue attempts were unsuccessful. To this day, nobody knows what really happened to the plane. It's possible that the machine was caught in a strong gust of wind and thrown into the sea. A lack of fuel could also have caused the Star Tiger to fall from the sky. At the end of the day, we really don't know. Stories like this are what cause so many people to have a fear of flying. It makes sense that so long as our feet are firmly planted on the ground, we're safe. However, in reality, plane crashes aren't common at all. They're exceedingly rare. However, in the case of the Star Tiger, we have no idea what even happened to the plane before or after it supposedly crashed. The most logical assumption is that the plane was doomed to a burial at sea, but this is nothing more than a theory. In reality, the plane may very well be out there somewhere still flying around. However, as we can all agree, this is extremely unlikely to be the case. Sadly, most people assume that the pilot and passengers lost their lives on that fateful day, and the remains were simply never recovered. Flight 19. What began as a simple military exercise was ultimately to become one of the most well-known incidents in the enigmatic Bermuda Triangle. On December 5, 1945, 5 American bombers left their base in Fort Lauderdale to practice navigating the open sea. After the maneuver, which also included a bomb targeting exercise, the fighter pilots were supposed to return. But shortly after the last pilot dropped his bomb, the mystery quickly began. The overheard radio messages proved that the men had lost their way and completely lost their orientation. This was not least due to the fact that the aircraft's compasses had completely refused to work. While the panic and confusion in the cabin of the pilots grew, contact with the squadron finally broke off completely. To find out what happened to the members of Flight 19, the U.S. Navy dispatched several rescue boats. As part of the investigation, one of the search planes was also said to have disappeared and never been seen again. On the evening of that fateful day, the crew of a tanker watched a huge explosion over the sea. The flames from the detonation are said to have reached 30 meters into the sky and burned for about 10 minutes. The captain of the tanker later reported that he had also seen a large puddle of oil on the water. However, there was no trace of the wreckage of the aircraft or even of survivors. In the following 5 days, those responsible tried with all their might to unravel the disappearance of Flight 19. Since the efforts were ultimately in vain, the incident remains one of the greatest mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle. USS CYCLOPS. Where is the USS CYCLOPS? People have been asking themselves this question for over 100 years. The 165-meter-long ship, which was entrusted with the task of supplying other ships with coal, left the port of Barbados in the spring of 1918. Subsequently, neither the supply ship nor the 306 people on board were ever seen again. The USS Cyclops was loaded with 11,000 tons of manganese ore on its last voyage. Therefore, after the ship's disappearance, rumors quickly arose that the USS Cyclops had been ambushed and sunk by warring German naval forces. After all, the raw material played a central role in the manufacture of ammunition. As mentioned before, however, there's no solid evidence that this is how the situation played out. The U.S. Navy believes it's more likely that the supply ship was improperly loaded and sunk as a result. The improper storage of the cargo, which weighed dozens of tons, could have sealed the fate of the USS Cyclops in conjunction with a mechanical defect or a sudden storm. However, since the wreck is still undiscovered, it's only a theory that cannot be proven beyond a doubt. In the years since the supposed wreck, researchers, historians, and rescue personnel have done everything within their power to find the ship and bring it and the remains of its occupants home. However, there's been no progress made since the ship went missing. Another possible scenario is that the ship and its crew may have been captured by enemy forces. A common theory, as mentioned a moment ago, is that the ship was taken down by the Germans. However, what if the Germans captured the crew and kept the ship and its cargo for their own use? After all, ammunition would have been in short supply during the war, so it makes sense that they would claim the cargo for themselves rather than waste it by sending it to the depths of the ocean. Truthfully, we have no idea what could have happened to the ship, but this theory is just as good as any other. Hopefully, we'll find the wreckage of the ship one day and be able to put this mystery to rest. However, for the moment, we simply don't know. Explanatory approaches. In view of these inexplicable incidents, a central question arises. What type of bizarre phenomena lead to ships and airplanes disappearing again and again in the Bermuda Triangle? A possible answer to this question could be hidden in the huge methane gas deposits that have been detected in the so-called Devil's Triangle. According to this theory, methane gas repeatedly forms on the seafloor as a result of pressure and temperature fluctuations. If the methane somehow escapes from its hydrate lumps, it rises to the surface of the water in the form of millions of small bubbles. The density of such a gas-water mixture is in turn much lower than the normal density of seawater. If a ship is directly above such a collection of methane bubbles in water, it could sink and disappear into the depths of the ocean within a very short time due to its lower density. Since this is a surprisingly quick process, the crew would have practically no time to send an emergency call. This natural phenomenon, which experts call blowout, could also lead to the disappearance of aircraft as well. Let's briefly look back at the story of Flight 19. As is well known, a gigantic explosion was observed in this situation. According to the blowout theory, the methane that rose from the sea could have ignited on the aircraft's engines. However, this approach is just one of many to explain the mysterious events in the Bermuda Triangle. The effect of magnetic anomalies, the occurrence of giant waves, and the storms that regularly gather there are also among the most common explanations. In turn, infrasound could occur in the aforementioned storms. This sound, the frequency of which cannot be perceived by the human ear, leads to violent fear reactions in humans and animals. While we may not notice the noise, our brains can still take note of it, producing a fear response that would be similar to watching a scary movie or walking around in the woods alone. This seems super strange, but this sound can produce feelings of uneasiness and paranoia without us ever perceiving anything with our conscious mind. But how does it come about that there's no trace of the aircraft and ships involved in these strange scenarios? The experts also have a possible explanation for this. The rapid current of the Gulf Stream could lead to the wreckage being swept away within a very short time. Those portions of the ship or aircraft that sink to the bottom of the ocean after the disasters would, in turn, be surrounded by quicksand, and in theory, the sand could swallow the pieces of the ships, never to be seen again. While these are the most common theories that have been proposed by scientists and researchers, others believe that the Bermuda Triangle holds a much darker and more bizarre secret than we could possibly imagine. Some people believe that the ocean's waters in this area may be haunted. However, other theories aside from this also claim that extraterrestrials may be involved. Truthfully, we can't disprove either of these theories. However, one thing is for sure, neither supernatural nor extraterrestrial events have ever been spotted above the water of the Bermuda Triangle. But that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. The truth can oftentimes be stranger than fiction. What do you think of the mysterious events in the Bermuda Triangle? Let us know your thoughts, suggestions, or feedback on today's video in the comments. Also, if you like this video and want to see others just like it, be sure to hit that like button and ring the notification bell to stay up to date with all of our future uploads.